Do Kwon, who is one of the co-creators of Terra Luna, has recently, as of March 22nd, said that they were going to buy $10 billion worth of Bitcoin as reserves for the Terra Luna coin. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that's going to mean for the price of Bitcoin, some of the price speculation on Bitcoin and Terra Luna, and some of the altcoins, because there are some analysts that are now starting to say that alt season is now beginning. And so I'm also going to talk about what price effect that may have on XRP. And speaking of XRP, Ripple has been in the news, specifically Chris Larsen, who is one of the co-creators of XRP and is an executive of Ripple, who is right now in a lawsuit with the SEC. He's recently been accused of saying that he thinks that Bitcoin should be banned. It might have been a little bit of an overstatement. And so he actually clarified some things that I'm going to talk about in this video. Hey everyone, my name is Randy. Welcome back to the Late Night Grind. Right now on this channel, we are covering the Ripple versus the SEC case, but I'm also covering cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any or all these topics interest you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Late Night Grind community. Also, I'd appreciate it if you hit that bell notification icon. That way YouTube will send you a notification when I release a new video. Also, if you're feeling generous, I'd appreciate it if you do two things. Smash the thumbs up button and watch till the end. Those are really the two best things you can do to support a YouTube channel. So if you do that, I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, let's jump into it. Okay, so first I want to talk about Chris Larsen, the executive of Ripple, who is in the middle of a lawsuit with the SEC, along with Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple and Ripple Labs. He was recently in the headlines as of today because last year he came out with an article stating that he thinks Bitcoin should move to a proof of stake, a la what Ethereum is doing. And he basically made some comments on it recently, and someone completely misread what he said and either not on purpose or on purpose tweeted out and said Chris Larsen wants Bitcoin banned. Well, Chris Larsen actually tweeted back at that, and he had to clarify some things. And he said, listen, I am pro-Bitcoin. I want Bitcoin to succeed. In fact, I hold Bitcoin. So Chris Larsen said, listen, it needs to be around. It's extremely important to the global it's extremely important to global macroeconomics. It's extremely important to the cryptocurrency world. But what he was saying is that because of all the proof of work that is being done, all the electricity that's used for mining and things like that, all the hash rate that's used, while there are some that use all renewable energy, he says there's a lot that are still not, and they're simply being incentivized to look for the cheapest electricity to mine their Bitcoin. He's simply saying he doesn't think that's the right thing to do. You should be looking at greener alternatives, or have Bitcoin switch to a proof of stake model or a different consensus model other than proof of work, which admittedly he said is a very, very tall task. So he did want to clarify that, but I did want to say that even though there's a lot of institutional buyers of Bitcoin, that Chris Larsen thinks that they might be penalized for holding Bitcoin, or they won't be incentivized for holding Bitcoin if Bitcoin is not carbon neutral. Meanwhile, these big companies are forced to be carbon neutral. I just think it's kind of strange that there are going to be companies that are going to that are going carbon neutral, or forcing everything to be carbon neutral. And in order to hold Bitcoin on their treasuries, something like a switch to a consensus model might actually have to happen. Now, that's what Chris Larsen is saying. I don't necessarily think that will happen, but nonetheless, I just think it's a little double-sided, at least in the United States, how the United States government can incentivize a company like Tesla, who is essentially being incentivized to produce hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of electricity-sucking vehicles and put them out to the world. Meanwhile, they're talking about Bitcoin miners that uses literally the same electricity as if they're destroying the planet. That's a little bit of some doublespeak to me, but let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of that. Okay, so let's continue our talk on Bitcoin and what Terra Luna is doing, buying billions and billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin for its reserves. So Do Kwon recently has said in a couple of tweets, in a series of tweets, that they already have $3 billion worth of seed money to buy Bitcoin for their reserves for Terra Luna. Well, what is Terra Luna exactly? And what it essentially does is create an ecosystem that stabilizes stablecoins. It uses things like burn mechanisms and price optimizations to make that happen. So what they're doing is actually twofold, and it's an incredibly smart thing to do. So by buying Bitcoin for the Terra Luna treasuries, they're automatically going to be driving the market cap of Terra Luna up simply by holding Bitcoin on their treasury. Now, what that's going to do is the Terra Luna token is then going to be backed by Bitcoin. Kind of like how the fiat world used to be backed by gold. Well, Terra Luna is going to be backed by Bitcoin, or at least a portion of it. In fact, it was already shown that they hold 18,000 Bitcoin already. They have $3 billion worth of seed money that is ready to buy Bitcoin. In fact, they've started doing it already. And they've said that once several bridges and some development has actually been done, they want to buy $10 billion worth of Bitcoin when it's all said and done. So what's that going to do to Bitcoin? What's that going to do to the price? Well, this came out on March 22nd, and since then, the price of Bitcoin has been skyrocketing. Some of this could be a little bit of FOMO, as well as some of the millions of dollars that TERRA has already spent on Bitcoin. To date, I believe they spent about $972 million of that initial $3 billion pledge. And that's all helping to drive the price of Bitcoin up. So I saw some information on this that I thought was really interesting. And what they talked about was the supply shock ratios. And if that sounds familiar, it's because our favorite young on-chain analyst, Will Clement, loves to talk about supply shock ratios and what effect they have on the price of Bitcoin. And right now, how ridiculously high they are. And a supply shock basically just means that there is less and less Bitcoin to buy. And what you can see now is over the last couple of weeks, especially since the government's been getting involved in things, taking your Bitcoin off of exchanges is becoming a very, very popular thing to do. So it's creating even more scarcity. So when you combine scarcity with billions of dollars coming in to buy something, well, they're talking major price escalation. Well, how much? So there's been a couple of models that I've seen, and it was based on what Elon Musk did last year when Elon Musk had Tesla buy $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. Now, supposedly he did that over a 21-day period, and it drove the price up several $1,000s just from a $1.5 billion purchase. And that was before he made any announcement about it. So some of the models based on that and what the market conditions are today state that if $10 billion were to actually be thrown into Bitcoin, and with the supply being what it is, as low as it is, and the supply shock ratio being as high as it is, speculations that Bitcoin could hit $200,000 in very short order if that amount of money was spent on that Bitcoin. And of course, along the way, you're probably going to have a considerable amount of short squeezes. So if Bitcoin flies past $100,000 and heads on to $200,000, well, yeah, it's going to be altcoin season. It's going to be all crypto everything season during that time frame. But it might be a very short time frame. We'll know. We have no idea. In fact, we don't even know if it will ever get there. This is all based on models. So what's XRP going to do? Well, based on one of my last videos, I talked about the price of XRP and what it was speculated to be correlated to with Bitcoin from back in 2018. That if Bitcoin was 100,000, XRP was going to be $32. Well, if Bitcoin's 200,000, well, is XRP going to be $64? That remains to be seen. And of course, a lot of it remains on XRP getting relisted on exchanges. That's not going to happen until this court case with Ripple versus the SEC is resolved and the SEC finally admits that XRP is indeed not a security, and Ripple had no notice, in fact, that it would even be considered a security, and Ripple will win outright. So let me know your thoughts in your comments down below, as well as on Twitter. You can actually go ahead and follow that Twitter thread where Do Kwon makes the announcement. It's a very, very fascinating thread. It's a very popular thread right about now. So if you go and link to my Twitter account, you'll be able to see it there. Also, if you want to do a deep dive on some of these models that I talked about in this video, there's a YouTube channel called Invest Answers, and he goes over some of these models in depth and complete with all of the spreadsheets. It's a lot more analytical, a lot more mathematical, a lot of spreadsheet digging on how they actually came up with some of these models predicting a $200,000 Bitcoin from a $10 billion purchase. So nonetheless, it's going to be driving the price of Bitcoin up, even though we don't know how much yet. And not only that, it's actually going to be driving the price of Luna Terra up, even though we don't know how much it will do for that as well. But nonetheless, it is on everybody's radar. So if you want to follow along with that story or all these others that I talked about on the channel, make sure you subscribe to the Late Night Grind YouTube channel, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter. So once again, thank you so much for smashing that thumbs up button and watching all the way to the end. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.